Dr. Victor Hale was known all over the world as a man who understood languages better than anyone else. People called him a genius. He spoke more than 30 languages, some living, some long forgotten. Universities invited him. Television shows praised him, and newspapers called him the man who understands every voice. His house looked more like a museum than a home. Shelves filled every wall, covered with old books, maps, and ancient papers. Rare manuscripts sat inside glass cases. Victor believed language was power, and he spent his life chasing it. But inside that large house, there were people no one noticed. Maria, the housemaid, worked quietly every day. She cleaned the rooms, prepared tea, and made sure everything stayed perfect. She rarely spoke unless someone asked her something. With her sometimes came her daughter, Lila, a thin, quiet girl who always carried a small backpack filled with books. Lila did not talk much. While her mother worked, she sat in corners reading or writing in a small notebook. The guards, visitors, and even Victor himself barely noticed her presence. To them, she was just the maid's daughter. But Lila noticed everything. She listened to conversations. She watched how people spoke. She remembered sounds easily, as if words stayed inside her mind forever. One evening, Victor received something that changed the calm routine of the house. A sealed package arrived from a private collector. Inside was an ancient manuscript written in a strange language no one could identify. The symbols looked unfamiliar, curved lines mixed with sharp marks, almost like pictures and letters combined. Victor felt excitement rush through him. This was the kind of discovery scholars dreamed about. If he translated it, his name would become even greater. For days, he locked himself inside his study. Papers covered his desk. He compared symbols, searched old records, and contacted experts around the world. But no one understood the language. Every attempt failed. The mystery only made Victor more obsessed. Late one afternoon, Maria entered the study to clean, while Victor stepped out to take a phone call. Lila followed quietly, holding her book. She walked slowly around the room, careful not to touch anything. Then her eyes fell on the manuscript. She stopped moving. Something about the symbols felt familiar. She leaned closer, her heart beating faster. The shapes reminded her of patterns she had seen before. Not exactly the same, but connected somehow. Without thinking, she whispered a few words softly, almost like reading. At that exact moment, Victor walked back into the room. He froze when he heard her voice. "What did you just say?" he asked. Lila looked nervous. "Nothing. I was just looking." Victor stepped closer, curious. He pointed at one line. "Read it again." Lila hesitated. She looked at her mother, who shook her head slightly, worried. But Victor's eyes were fixed on the girl now. Slowly, Lila spoke again. This time she translated the sentence in a clear English. Victor laughed at first. It sounded impossible. Many experts had already failed. How could a child guess correctly? But then he checked his notes. The meaning matched perfectly. His smile slowly disappeared. He asked her another line. Lila answered again, calmly, as if it was easy. She explained how certain symbols change sound depending on position. She spoke simply, not realizing how shocking her words were. The room became very quiet. Victor felt something strange, excitement mixed with disbelief. He had spent weeks trying to understand the text, and this girl had done it in minutes. Maria stepped forward protectively. "She's just a child," she said softly. But Victor was no longer listening. His mind was racing. Questions filled his head. How did she know this? Where did she learn it? Was this luck or something else? For the first time, Victor truly looked at Lila, not as the maid's daughter, but as someone important. "Come back tomorrow," he said slowly. "I want to test something." Lila lowered her eyes. She felt uneasy, though she didn't know why. Something about the way Victor looked at her made her uncomfortable, as if this moment would change her life forever. As she left the study with her mother, the manuscript remained open on the table. And for the first time in his life, Dr. Victor Hale realized there was a language he did not understand at all. The language of a genius no one had noticed. The next morning, the house felt different. Dr. Victor Hale woke up earlier than usual. He barely slept. His mind kept replaying the moment from the night before. the quiet girl reading words that experts could not understand. Part of him believed it was luck. Another part feared it was something much bigger. He arranged his study carefully. The manuscript was placed in the center of the table. Several notebooks lay open beside it. But Victor had also done something else. Without telling Maria or Lila, he invited 2 language experts to visit that afternoon. He wanted proof. When Maria arrived with Lila after school, she immediately sensed tension in the air. Victor greeted them politely, but his smile looked forced. Lila noticed the strangers sitting in the room, watching her closely. She felt like she was being examined. Victor spoke calmly. Lila, yesterday you said you understood some of the symbols. Today, I want you to try again. Maria stepped forward. She's nervous, she said. She's just a child. Victor nodded, but his eyes stayed on Lila. Only if she wants to. Lila looked at the manuscript. The strange symbols felt familiar again, like a song she had heard long ago, but never fully learned. She slowly sat down. One of the experts whispered to the other, clearly doubtful. This is a waste of time. Lila ignored them. Victor pointed at a new section of text, one no one had translated before. What does this part say? The room went silent. Lila studied the symbols. She traced the shapes with her finger, not touching the page. After a moment, she spoke. It is not one language, she said quietly. It is mixed, 2 languages together. One is older, the other changes the meaning. The experts exchanged confused looks. Lila continued, explaining how certain symbols repeated only at emotional moments in the text. She said the writer was not only giving information, but also hiding feelings inside the structure of the language. Victor felt his chest tighten. He had not noticed that. She translated the passage slowly. When knowledge is used for pride, it becomes danger. The words hung in the air. One expert leaned forward suddenly. How do you know that? He asked sharply. Lila shrugged slightly. The pattern repeats. It is like warning someone. The men began checking the symbols themselves. Their expressions changed from amusement to shock. The translation made sense. Perfect sense. The room filled with quiet tension. Maria watched nervously. She did not understand the language, but she understood people. And she could see the way Victor was looking at her daughter now, not with kindness, but with interest, like someone discovering something valuable. Victor asked another question, then another. Each time, Lila answered calmly. She did not try to impress anyone. She simply explained what she saw. Minutes later, the experts stopped questioning her. One of them leaned back slowly and whispered, "This is impossible." Victor felt excitement rising inside him. Years of work, years of searching, and the answer had been sitting unnoticed inside his own house. But Lila suddenly frowned. "There is something strange," she said. Victor looked up quickly. "What do you mean?" She pointed to a symbol repeated near the end of the page. "This part is different. It is not information. It is a message." She hesitated before continuing. "It says the writer tried to warn someone important, but they did not listen." The air felt heavier. Victor forced a small smile. "And who was the warning for?" Lila looked back at the manuscript, her eyes moving slowly across the symbols. Her voice became softer. "A family name," she said. "I think it belongs to someone powerful." Victor's heart skipped. "What name?" he asked quietly. Lila read the symbol again, carefully. The experts leaned forward. Maria held her breath. Lila spoke the name out loud. Victor's smile disappeared instantly, because the name written inside the ancient manuscript was his own family name. The room fell completely silent. For the first time, Dr. Victor Hale felt something he was not used to feeling. Fear. And Lila, without fully understanding why, suddenly felt that translating this language might bring more trouble than answers. After that day, everything changed inside the house. Dr. Victor Hale no longer saw Lila as just a child visiting with her mother. Now, every time she entered the study, his attention followed her. He watched the way she looked at symbols, the way she listened before speaking, and how easily she understood patterns others could not see. But Lila did not feel proud. She felt uncomfortable. The manuscript no longer looked interesting to her. It felt heavy, as if every new sentence carried a warning she did not fully understand. At night, She began thinking about the words she translated. Knowledge, pride, danger. The sentences stayed in her mind long after she left the mansion. Maria noticed the change in her daughter. Lila became quieter than before. One evening, Maria asked gently, "Do you want to stop going there?" Lila shook her head slowly. "I want to understand it," she said. "But something feels wrong." Maria did not like that answer. Lila had always been different. When she was younger, she learned words faster than other children. She remembered sounds after hearing them once. In school, teachers first praised her, then became confused by her questions. She did not memorize languages, she felt them. She spent hours in public libraries, reading old books others ignored. Sometimes she guessed meanings of foreign sentences without knowing why. It felt natural to her, like solving a puzzle. But being different was not easy. Other children called her strange. Some laughed when she spoke about languages no one else cared about. So she learned to stay quiet. Only Maria truly believed in her. Meanwhile, Victor's excitement continued to grow. He began recording every translation session. Cameras were placed in the study under the excuse of research documentation. He told himself this was normal. This discovery could change his career forever. But deep inside, another thought slowly appeared. If the world knew a young girl had solved the mystery, where would that leave him? Victor pushed the thought away, convincing himself he was guiding her, helping her. Still, he started organizing notes under his own name. The manuscript became clearer with each session. It told the story of an ancient civilization destroyed not by war, but by arrogance. Their leaders believed knowledge made them superior. They ignored warnings until it was too late. Lila noticed something else. The language changed tone whenever it mentioned leaders or scholars. The sentences became colder, almost angry. It felt personal, as if the writer had been betrayed. One afternoon, while translating alone, Lila stopped suddenly. A sentence stood out from the rest. She read it again, slowly. "The one who seeks glory will lose everything." A strange feeling ran through her chest. Victor entered the room at that moment. "What does it say?" he asked quickly. Lila repeated the sentence. Victor forced a smile, but his fingers tightened around his notebook. The words felt uncomfortably close to him. "It's just a story," he said lightly. Ancient people like dramatic warnings. But Lila was not convinced. The manuscript did not feel like a story. It felt like a message meant for someone specific. And the more she translated, the more she felt the text was not only describing the past, it was predicting something. That evening, as Maria and Lila prepared to leave, Lila glanced back at the study door. Victor was already writing quickly, barely noticing them leaving. For the first time, she wondered why he looked more excited after every warning they discovered. Later that night, Victor reviewed the recordings alone. He replayed Lila's translations again and again. The accuracy was undeniable. This could make him famous again, bigger than before. He opened a new document on his computer and typed the title. Translation of the Hale Manuscript, Dr. Victor Hale. He paused for only a moment before continuing. Across the city, Lila sat by her window, staring at her notebook. She copied one symbol again and again, trying to understand why it made her uneasy. Then she noticed something she had missed before. The warning sentence appeared again later in the manuscript, but this time, the symbol for glory was connected to a family mark. The same mark she had seen next to Victor's name. Lila closed the notebook slowly. For the first time, she realized the manuscript might not be warning about history. It might be warning about someone who was still alive. And she did not know if she should keep translating at all. The days that followed felt heavier than before. Each time Lila returned to the mansion, the study felt less like a place of learning and more like a place full of secrets. The manuscript was almost fully translated now, and with every new page, the message became clearer and darker. The ancient text was not simply telling history. It was describing how a powerful group once ignored warnings because they wanted recognition more than truth. Their leaders believed they were too intelligent to be wrong. By the time they realized their mistake, their civilization had already begun to collapse. Lila felt uneasy every time she read those parts. Dr. Victor Hale, however, felt the opposite. The closer they came to finishing the translation, the more excited he became. He spoke about conferences, publications, and interviews. He walked faster, talked louder, and barely listened when Lila tried to explain the emotional meaning behind the words. To Victor, the manuscript meant success. To Lila, it felt like a warning growing louder. One afternoon, Maria arrived earlier than usual and found Victor speaking on the phone inside the study. His voice sounded different, sharp and hurried. "Yes," he said quietly. "The translation is nearly complete. This will be my greatest work." Maria froze outside the door. Something about his words made her uncomfortable. When Victor noticed her, he quickly ended the call and smiled as if nothing had happened. That evening, Maria spoke to Lila at home. "I don't trust this anymore," she said softly. "People change when they see opportunity." Lila stayed silent for a long moment. "I think the manuscript is trying to stop something," she finally said. Maria looked confused. "Stop what?" "I don't know yet," Lila replied. "But it keeps warning about someone who wants fame too much." The next day, while Victor stepped out for a meeting, Lila continued translating alone. She reached a section written in tighter, more complex symbols. The writing looked rushed, almost desperate. Her heart began to beat faster as the meaning formed in her mind. The writer described a scholar who ignored repeated warnings and claimed discovery as his own. The text said this person believed knowledge belonged only to him. Because of that choice, trust was broken and disaster followed. Lila's hands trembled slightly. The symbols beside the description looked familiar again. She checked her notes. The same family mark appeared beside the scholar's name. The same mark connected to Victor's family. At that moment, the study door opened. Victor walked in, smiling. "Did you find something new?" Lila hesitated. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing against her words. "This part, it talks about someone taking credit," she said carefully. Victor's smile faded for a second before returning. "Ancient stories always have villains," he replied lightly. "It doesn't mean anything now," but his voice sounded tense. He quickly changed the subject, asking her to continue translating. Lila noticed how he avoided looking at certain sections of the text. For the first time, she wondered if he already understood the warning and was choosing to ignore it. Later that week, Victor made an announcement. A global press conference was scheduled. Scholars and journalists from different countries would attend. He planned to reveal the translation to the world. Maria felt fear immediately. "You promised to protect her," she told him. Victor nodded. "Of course. She helped. I will mention her." But his words felt empty. Lila watched quietly. She could sense something was wrong, but she did not know how to stop it. That night, unable to sleep, she reviewed the last untranslated section of the manuscript. Only a few lines remained. The symbols were different from the rest, written more carefully, as if the writer wanted to make sure they were never misunderstood. Slowly, Lila translated the first part. Her breath caught. The final warning was not general at all. It was personal. It described a moment when truth would be hidden for glory, and said the person responsible would be exposed in front of everyone. Lila looked at the symbol beside the sentence. It was the same mark again. Victor's family mark. She closed the manuscript slowly, her hands shaking. Outside, the mansion was silent. Everything looked calm, but Lila understood now. The manuscript was not just telling a story from the past. It was describing something that was about to happen. And the closer Victor moved toward fame, the closer he moved toward the warning's ending. The day of the press conference arrived faster than Lila expected. The mansion was full of movement. Cameras were being set up. Assistants walked in and out carrying papers and equipment. Journalists from different countries gathered, excited to witness what Dr. Victor Hale called the most important linguistic discovery of the century. Lila stood quietly near the back of the room beside her mother. Maria held her hand tightly. She could feel her daughter's nervousness without a single word being spoken. Victor stood confidently at the front, dressed perfectly, smiling for cameras. He looked calm, but inside his thoughts were racing. Years of work, recognition, and respect were about to grow even bigger. This moment was everything he had worked for. He began speaking. He explained how the manuscript was discovered, how difficult the language was, and how many experts had failed to understand it. The audience listened carefully. Cameras flashed. Every word increased the excitement in the room. But something felt wrong to Lila. Victor spoke about the translation as if he alone had solved it. He mentioned assistance briefly, without saying her name. The deeper meanings, the emotional warnings, he explained them poorly, changing parts that made him uncomfortable. Maria looked at Lila, worried. She saw the pain in her daughter's eyes. Lila did not want attention. She never wanted fame. But she also knew the manuscript's message was about truth being ignored. And now it was happening again. Victor continued speaking, showing translated lines on a large screen behind him. The audience nodded, impressed. Everything seemed perfect, until the questions began. A journalist raised her hand. Dr. Hale, can you explain why certain symbols change meaning in emotional sections of the text? Victor paused for a moment. He answered, but his explanation sounded uncertain. He spoke in general terms, avoiding details. Another scholar asked about the mixed language structure. Victor hesitated again. His answers became longer, but less clear. Whispers started spreading through the audience. Lila felt her heart beating faster. She knew the answers. She understood the structure completely. But speaking up meant changing everything. Victor noticed the growing doubt in the room. Sweat formed on his forehead. He quickly moved to the final slides, hoping to end the conference before more questions came. That was when one professor stood up. With respect, he said, "Your explanation does not match the grammar pattern shown here. Who actually translated this section?" The room became very quiet. Victor opened his mouth, but no words came out. At the back of the room, Maria squeezed Lila's hand gently. She did not say anything, but her eyes were clear. "Do what is right." Lila slowly stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but clear. "I can explain it." Heads turned immediately. Cameras shifted toward her. Victor's face froze in shock. Lila walked to the front, nervous but calm. She pointed at the symbols on the screen and explained how the language combined logic with emotion. She showed how certain symbols changed meaning depending on the writer's intention. Her explanation was simple, but precise. The room fell silent again, this time in amazement. The scholars nodded. Some began taking notes quickly. The answers made sense in ways Victor's explanations never had. Victor felt the ground slipping beneath him. Lila was not trying to embarrass him. She only spoke the truth. But truth, once spoken, could not be taken back. Then she translated the next hidden line, one Victor had avoided mentioning. Her voice grew quieter as she read. "The one who takes credit for another's wisdom will lose honor before all." The words echoed through the hall. Everyone understood the meaning. Victor lowered his eyes. For the first time in his career, he had nothing to say. The room filled with murmurs. Cameras flashed faster. The story was changing in real time. Lila stepped back, her hands shaking slightly. She did not feel victorious. She only felt relieved, as if a heavy weight had finally lifted. Maria placed a hand on her shoulder proudly. Victor remained standing alone at the podium, realizing the manuscript had not only told a story, it had predicted this exact moment. And now, the warning had come true. But as the conference ended and people rushed to speak with Lila, one final thought stayed in her mind. The manuscript still had one last line left untranslated. And somehow, she felt that line would change everything again. The press conference ended, but the story did not. By the next morning, videos of the event were everywhere. Clips of Lila calmly explaining the rare language spread across the internet. People shared the moment again and again. The quiet girl correcting a famous scholar without anger or pride. Headlines changed quickly. At first, the news talked about the ancient manuscript. But soon, everyone talked about Lila. Unknown girl solves impossible language. Young genius reveals truth behind famous polyglot's discovery. For the first time in her life, Lila felt the world looking at her. And she did not like it. At school, students who once ignored her suddenly wanted to talk to her. Teachers treated her differently. Some praised her, while others watched her with curiosity, as if she had become someone new overnight. But inside, Lila felt the same. She still preferred quiet spaces and books over attention. Maria worried constantly. Reporters tried to contact them. Messages arrived from universities and research groups offering scholarships and opportunities. It felt overwhelming. "You don't have to accept anything," Maria told her gently. "We can go back to normal." Lila smiled slightly. "I don't think normal exists anymore." Meanwhile, Dr. Victor Hale faced a very different reality. The academic world reacted harshly. Some criticized him for taking credit. Others said he allowed ambition to blind him. Interviews he once easily received were suddenly canceled. Victor stayed inside his house, avoiding calls. For years, he believed knowledge made him important. Now he realized something painful. Knowledge without honesty meant nothing. He replayed the press conference in his mind again and again. Each time, he saw the moment Lila stepped forward. She had not spoken with anger. She had not tried to shame him. She simply told the truth. And that made his mistake feel heavier. A week later, Victor asked Maria and Lila to visit the mansion again. Maria hesitated, but Lila agreed. She felt something unfinished still connected to the manuscript. When they arrived, the house felt quieter than before. The excitement was gone. The study looked the same, but the atmosphere had changed. Victor stood near the desk, looking older somehow. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. Lila did not respond immediately. She waited. "I forgot why I loved languages in the first place," Victor continued. "I wanted recognition more than understanding." His voice carried regret, not pride. Maria watched carefully, unsure whether to believe him. Victor then placed the manuscript on the table. "There is still one line left," he said. "I think you should be the one to finish it." Lila looked at the final symbols again. She had avoided translating them since the conference. Something about them felt final, as if they carried the true message of the entire text. She sat down slowly. The symbols were simpler than expected, but written with great care. The writer wanted these words to be remembered. Lila read silently first. Her expression softened. "It's not a warning," she said after a moment. Victor frowned slightly. "Then what is it?" "It's a reminder." She had not translated out loud yet. Instead, she looked around the room, at the books, the notes, the years of knowledge collected in one place. For the first time, Victor did not rush her. He simply waited. Outside, the world continued talking about the genius girl. Offers and opportunities kept arriving. People finally listened to her voice. But Lila understood something important now. The manuscript was never about proving intelligence. It was about learning when to listen. She closed her eyes for a moment, preparing to read the final line. Because she knew once those words were spoken, the story, for her, for Victor, and for everyone who heard it, would finally be complete. The study was completely silent. Lila looked at the final line of the manuscript again. The symbols were simple compared to the rest of the text, but they carried a quiet weight, as if the writer had saved the most important message for last. Dr. Victor Hale stood across from her, waiting. This time, there was no impatience in his face, only curiosity and regret. Maria stood beside the door, watching her daughter carefully. She had seen Lila solve problems before, but this moment felt different. It felt like the ending of something much bigger than a translation. Lila took a slow breath. "It says," she began softly, "great knowledge does not belong to the loudest voice, but to the one who listens." The words filled the room gently, yet they felt powerful. Victor lowered his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. The message was simple, but it explained everything: the warnings, the mistakes, and the lesson hidden inside the manuscript. The ancient writer had not tried to protect knowledge. He had tried to protect people from their own pride. Victor finally spoke. "I spent my whole life trying to be heard," he said quietly. "I forgot how to listen." There was no excuse in his voice now, only honesty. Lila nodded slightly. She did not feel anger toward him anymore. She understood something he had learned too late. Intelligence meant nothing without humility. News of the final translation spread quickly. Scholars praised the message, calling it one of the most meaningful discoveries in linguistic history. But what surprised people most was not the manuscript itself. It was Lila. Universities invited her to speak. Research groups offered mentorship. People wanted to know how a young girl, once ignored by everyone, had seen what experts could not. Lila's answer was always simple. I listened. She never called herself a genius. She said languages were like people. They revealed their meaning only when treated with patience and respect. Life slowly began to change. Maria no longer worked long hours cleaning houses. Opportunities opened for both of them. Yet Lila remained the same quiet girl who loved books and quiet spaces. Fame never became important to her. One afternoon, months later, Lila received an invitation to return to Victor's mansion. This time, not as a visitor waiting in the corner, but as an honored guest at a small academic gathering. She hesitated at first, but Maria encouraged her to go. When Lila entered the house again, everything felt different. The same walls, the same shelves, the same study, but the way people looked at her had changed. They listened when she spoke. Victor greeted her respectfully, not as a teacher, but as an equal. During the gathering, he publicly acknowledged her work and admitted his mistake. The apology was simple but sincere. The room responded with quiet respect. Lila realized something important then. The manuscript had not only changed her life, it had changes too. Later that evening, as she stood near the study window, she looked at the place where she once sat unnoticed with her books. She remembered how invisible she had felt. Now, people asked for her thoughts. They valued her voice. But she understood the real lesson was not about recognition. It was about being seen. Before leaving, Victor handed her a small notebook. For your own discoveries, he said. Lila smiled softly. As she walked out of the mansion with her mother, the sun was setting, painting the sky in warm colors. The world outside felt larger than before, full of possibilities. The girl no one noticed had become the voice everyone listened to. And the final message of the manuscript remained true. Sometimes the quietest voice carries the wisdom that changes everything.